start with a story about a young boy named Tommy who had a beloved dog he called Butch. Now, Butch and Tommy were tight. They were best of buddies. They shadowed each other all day long. Tommy would go off to school. Butch would lay down on the throw rug by the front door and stay there all day long until Tommy came home. At dinner time, Butch would sit next to Tommy's chair. At bedtime, Butch would crawl up into bed with Tommy. They loved each other like brothers. But one Sunday afternoon, Tommy's family sat down for a roast beef dinner. The house was just filled with that aroma of beef. And as the meal progressed, Tommy's dad noticed that he was taking a beautiful piece of beef and trying to hide it under some potato peels and a gnawed-off piece of corn. And Tommy asks to be excused from the table. When he gets up, he takes his plate with him and starts walking over towards Butch's dinner bowl. Dad asks Tommy, "What are you doing?" "Oh, this is for Butch." "Now, Tommy, I think it would be better if you returned to the table and ate the best portion of the beef yourself and gave to Butch whatever was left over." Well, reluctantly, young Tommy returns to the table and nibbles away some more at his meal. Afterwards, he gathers up all the leftovers from everyone's plate and walks over to Butch's bowl. Now, Butch is there, shaking and quivering, his tail's going a mile a minute, his tongue is panting. And as Tommy scrapes the leftovers into Butch's bowl, he pats him on the head and said, "Butch, I wanted to make you an offering, but all I have here is a collection." Now, I tell that story because it often strikes me that in the church, we are confused about the difference between an offering and a collection. Now, what do you call that moment when the ushers come down the aisle and pass out the plate? Is it, in your head, an offering, or is it a collection? Now, I guess your answer to that will depend upon where your heart really is in relationship to God. A collection, by definition, is just the gathering up of something to offer to another. In the case of the collection in a church, it's a collection of coin and currency. Now, I would contend that it doesn't really take much devotion and no sacrifice to make a donation to a collection. Now, an offering, on the other hand, is something quite different. An offering, by definition, is the presentation of something out of worship and devotion. Collection, sort of like giving the leftovers, while an offering is the gift of the prime cut of our lives. An offering involves sacrifice. And a sacrifice is an awesome thing because it is so representative of what's really in our heart in terms of our devotion, our commitments, and our priorities. Now, today, in our gospel lesson, we find Jesus at the temple. It's hard for us really to understand this temple business in the Bible. It's so foreign to us. Well, the temple existed behind a great wall. And when you walk through the main gate, you entered into a great courtyard, maybe a couple of football fields large. And there in that courtyard, people would gather to catch up on the local news and gossip. You could purchase goods and services. Sacrifices could be bought to be made at worship in the temple. But when you walk through the front gate, you come to a table that had on it 3 strong boxes. These boxes were there to receive whatever gifts you were going to make to the temple on that occasion. One box represented gifts for the care of the temple itself. Think of it as paying the electric, the gas, the insurance, etc. The second box was meant for gifts to the priests to support their salary, their housing, etc. The third box was gifts for the widow, the orphan, the poor. The welfare system back in that era, the religious community took care of people. But they needed gifts to do it. And behind each of these boxes, strong boxes, there would be a fellow you might think of as an usher, maybe more like a guard. And when you came in, you just didn't drop your money into one of these boxes in an anonymous envelope. You had to present the gift to the usher, who would then call out the amount of the gift as he deposited it in the box on your behalf. So the temple courtyard was usually filled with a lot of chaos to begin with, and there's always somebody calling out sums of money. $100, $50, 20, 10, 5, 2 cents. And what Jesus took note of was that those who looked like they were most well-to-do were giving their gifts quite arrogantly, as that usher would call out the amount that they had presented. They're sort of strutting around like a peacock, or like one of those football players doing one of those crazy dances after they score a touchdown. They wanted to draw attention to themselves. Jesus notes that these were the kinds of people that were giving out of their abundance, meaning they were given the leftovers, not the prime cut. They were giving without heart, without devotion, without sacrifice. And then Jesus notices that poor widow woman come through the gate. Probably very wrinkled facial features, clothes that were well worn, maybe hobbling on a cane as she pulled her grocery cart behind her. She presents the gift and is called out, 2 cents. And all those arrogant peacocks are probably chuckling and saying, "Oh, lady, why don't you just keep it? That's not going to do anyone any good whatsoever." What does Jesus do? He draws attention to that old woman, saying, "Take note of her. For while everyone else was giving out of their abundance, she just gave out of her poverty everything that she had to live on." And this anonymous widow has now become known by all through the ages for that gift of we call the widow's mite. For she was giving not to a collection, she was making an offering. From the conviction and devotion in her heart, she presented to God everything she had. An offering. Now Jesus reminds us it's never the size of the gift that counts. It's always the cost of the gift to the giver that matters. It's not the amount, it's the sacrifice behind it that matters. And he honored that widow. Because unlike all the arrogant ones who had it all, she understood what giving was about the best. Now, I may have told you this story some time ago, but fits what I want to say, so I'll tell it again if I did. It's a story about the young man who's been dating this young girl for several years. Now, our mom and dad are getting anxious for a wedding date to be established. And one evening, they're having dinner at the parents' house. And after the meal, Dad retreats to the family room to settle into his easy chair. The young man is following close behind and says, "Sir, could I have a moment of your time?" "Sure, son, what's on your mind?" He says, "Well, what'd you think about that? Would it be possible?" And in the midst of all of his stuttering, Dad believes that he knows what he's going to be asked. So he says, "Well, sure, son. You have our permission." "Permission?" "Yeah, you want to marry our daughter, and her happiness means everything in the world to her mother and I." "Oh, no, sir, it's nothing like that." "Well, what are you talking about?" He says, "Well, you see, I'm $100 short of my car loan this month, and I was wondering if you would loan me the money." Now Dad's demure completely changes. He says, "That's going to be impossible, boy. I hardly know you." Well, how well do we know the Lord? When the offering plate comes around, aren't we often saying, "Lord, I hardly know you"? We let it pass. This widow woman, she had a great heart. Jesus wants us to take her heart to be our heart. Jesus reminds us always consider our gifts to be an offering, not a collection. It is so easy to understand what this parable is about, but also so easy to put it out of mind, because we really don't want to know the Lord that well. May we give to the Lord out of our poverty. Not out of our abundance. For it's in the poverty that true sacrifice is made on behalf of another. Oh, Jesus sets before us such high standards to strive for. There's no doubt about that. But he also gives us the strength and the spirit to reach high standards. I see the problem in the world is we don't want to hold up standards of achievement anymore. We want to dumb down everything. Well, there's no dumbing down in the kingdom of God. Holds up before us the highest of all standards. And that widow woman, in her poverty, exceeded the standards of everyone else that day. She gave all of her heart, all of her soul, all that she had as a gift to God. It's no wonder we remember her through the ages. How well do we really want to know the Lord? Enough to offer to him a real offering of our life? Or just that collection that we gather up from all the leftovers of our life? I think we all know what God looks for from us. Let's try to put a smile on his face one day when he sees us enter into his temple and make our gifts. What's it going to be? A collection or an offering? That's for each of us to decide. May we decide correctly. So we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.